Hi, fifth graders. Today we're going to look at a couple different scenarios where we can solve a division problem, and we're going to have to interpret or figure out what to do with the remainder. And these are some of my favorite story problems to look at because they are great thinking questions. Each question is unique, and how we use or maybe don't use the remainder in a division problem totally depends on the question that we're asking. So let's look at a story problem together, and then we'll ask four different questions based on that story problem that each use the remainder in a little bit of a different way. So first, the story problem reads, Scott and his family are hiking part of the Appalachian Trail that is 232 miles long. Scott and his family will hike 9 miles each day on the trail. Okay, so I always like to read through questions first just to get the gist of what's going on. So I'm picturing this boy Scott. He's got on his backpack and he has his water bottle, and he and his family are getting ready to go hiking. Now I'm going to reread the story problem, going line by line to look more specifically for math information. So the first sentence reads, Scott and his family are hiking part of the Appalachian Trail that is 232 miles long. I know that no matter what question I ask, that 232 miles is going to be important. So I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind. The second sentence reads, Scott and his family will hike 9 miles each day on the trail. Well, that gives me two pieces of information. First, it tells me that they're hiking 9 miles each day, but even more importantly than that, it confirms that this is a division question, because what that sentence tells me is that I'm splitting apart these 232 miles into equal groups of 9. And when we split something apart into equal groups, that is a division problem. So we can write a division equation even before we know what question is being asked. And that division equation would look like this. 232 total miles are being split apart, so I'll write that first as my dividend. I'm dividing those by 9, which represents 9 miles per day. I got that right from the second sentence in the story problem. And when I do the math on that, I end up with an answer of 25 remainder 7. Now, since I split these 232 miles into 9 groups with 9 miles each day, that means I have 25 equal groups of 9 miles. Those 25 equal groups represent 25 days that Scott and his family hiked exactly 9 miles. Finally, the remainder of 7 means that there are 7 leftover miles in order to finish the trail. Your remainder is always going to be the same unit as your dividend. So that's how I knew that that remainder of 7 was 7 leftover miles. So now let's take a look more closely at 4 different types of questions you might see that will use the pieces of this division equation a little differently. So the first question is, how many days will Scott and his family hike exactly 9 miles? So if I'm looking at that for math information, one word jumps out to me, and it's that word exactly. If I want exactly 9 miles, I want how many days did they hike an equal 9 miles? We don't want to know what days they hiked something other than 9 miles. We just want to know exactly 9 miles per day. So if I'm looking at my answer of 25 remainder 7, I know there were 25 days of 9 miles each day and an extra 7 miles. To answer this particular question, I'm not worried about these extra 7 miles. So I can ignore them or drop that remainder. I'm going to pretend like those 7 miles don't matter, because in order to answer this question, they don't. I just want to know, how many days was it that they hiked exactly 9 miles? And this problem tells me that it took 25 days of 9 miles each. Let's take a look at a second question. This question reads, how many days will Scott's family need to hike the entire trail? So now a slightly different question has a totally new meaning. The most important word here is entire. if they're hiking the entire trail, I need to use all 232 of these miles. So that means it can't be just 25 days anymore, because 25 days at 9 miles each day is only 225 miles. Now I can't ignore this remainder of 7. Instead, I need to hike those last 7 miles on one extra day. So now, instead of 25 days, I need 25 days of 9 miles plus one more day with 7 miles. This kind of question is going to require me to bump up my answer. So instead of 25 full days, I'm going to bump it up one extra day to 26 days because I need to make sure I also hike those last 7 miles in order to hike the entire trail. Now you might also see this third question. It's kind of related to question 2. It says, how many miles will Scott's family hike on the last day? So the key here is I want to know just about the last day. So we need to look at now how many leftover miles there were. I know he hiked 9 miles, 25 different days, but I'm not worried about those days. I'm just worried about the very last day, which is those leftover miles. That means the answer to this question is going to use only the remainder, because on the last day, Scott and his family hiked 7 miles. Okay, are you still with me? We've gone through the first 3 types of problems. There's one more story problem, and this one might look something like this. Scott's family decided that next year they want to hike all 252 miles in 9 days. If they hike the same amount each day, how many miles will they hike each day? So now I'm using the exact same equation, 232 divided by 9 equals 25 remainder 7, but this time the 9 means 9 days. So that means my 25 remainder 7 means 25 total miles plus 7 extra miles. So the key in this kind of question is that they want to hike the same amount each day. So that means I'm not hiking just 25 miles. I'm hiking 25 miles plus a little bit extra. I still have those 7 leftover miles. In order for all 9 days to be equal, I'm going to hike a little bit more than 25 miles per day. That means my answer is not going to be a whole number. I can share the remainder and turn it into a fraction in this kind of question. To do that, I take my remainder of 7 and I write it as my numerator, and my divisor of 9 and write it as my denominator. So that means if I'm splitting that apart equally, my answer would be 25 and 7/9 miles every single day. So these are 4 main types of story problems. We are going to do lots of examples with these over the course of the year, but keep in mind that sometimes you'll have to ignore or drop your remainder. Sometimes you'll have to bump your answer up to include another group. Sometimes you're going to use only the remainder, and sometimes you're going to turn that remainder into a fraction and share it with the rest of your quotient so that you can use all of the pieces you need to. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to look at more questions like this with you.